Hello and welcome to my PowerPoint presentation on fake news in the modern world. Specifically, I am discussing how politics of the individual have been swayed with social media. As a disclaimer, this presentation will be referring to recent political events, depressing topics, and others similar. You have been warned. First things first. What is UNESCO? UNESCO is the United Nations' educational, scientific and cultural organization. They stand for a wide array of different things, but most important to our discussion, they stand for the right of freedom of expression, as you can see on screen. This falls under the 16th Global Challenge. The main focus is going to be on how fake news can undermine those peaceful and inclusive societies that UNESCO tries to promote. How do they achieve this? Well, disinformation and hate speech have been used in the past to influence elections, the narratives of the general public, sowing confusion in the process. Where is the best place to share falsified info due to misplaced trust with communities and individuals? That's right, social media. Twitter's not right. There you go. I will demonstrate how fake news can undermine UNESCO's efforts by demonstrating the falsified narratives pushed with social media. There are 3 academic pieces I will be focusing on. These are algorithmic audiencing, governing fake news, and priming and fake news. I have also produced a case study on the fake news on Instagram, focusing on its trends and regulations. This is the format of the presentation you are about to see. We've got Reading 1, Reading 2, Reading 3, Findings, the case study on Instagram, and Media Culture, where we will be discussing the fundamental issues and maybe how we could fix it. Here are some of the terms we will be using in the presentation. For example, media capture, algorithmic audiencing, fake news, disinformation, dissociation, content moderation, freedom of expression, and media skepticism. All of these terms are available online by just searching up simple definitions. This text mostly discusses Facebook as its primary example. This will get relevant with the case study, and even then, most social media nowadays followed Facebook's example. This text argues that the general topic of discussion about social media should shift from issues of censorship and free speech to the audiences that consume it via organized personal algorithms. That's a very fair point, and the text subsequently brings up examples that would be used in the case study. The main argument of the text is that social medias interfere with the freedom of speech of others by changing the algorithm for personal interests, specifically economic interests, saying it directly on, as you can tell, multiple different occasions. The Facebook newsfeed has almost certainly evolved into a user's discovery page, recommended tab, etc. on other platforms. Although beginning as something curated by the user, it has malformed into a product to further the economical interests of the platform's hosts, as mentioned earlier. If the feed of Facebook's is entirely focused on the monetary gain for the platform, this has definitely been the reason for other platforms to inherit the same system. This was initially met with Facebook users generally disliking the new newsfeed, as it directly hindered user interactions on the platform. Knowing the context now, this was basically a losing battle. Facebook sold its users' data for economical gain and had no chance at stopping, even if users disliked it, as mentioned by the text. There you go. Facebook's new user model heavily encouraged users to interact with each other to maximize advertising revenue and subsequently profits. This algorithmic distribution actively hindered the free speech of others, as it now was based on audience engagement, leading to audience recommendations. Facebook users now, for example, saw more sad posts than quote-unquote happy posts if they interacted with the sad posts. This demonstrates that the algorithm would recommend the kind of content the user enjoyed and subsequently trickled that similar content into other pieces they consumed. This will be referenced in the case study. This means that platforms have the ability now to manipulate the political beliefs of its users. Algorithms now, for example, have the ability to manipulate election results by just recommending similar posts and political discussions more akin to the user's own interests, and maybe even the political interests of the platform itself. So now let's get on to reading 2. The goal of this text is to examine the government regulations of social media and how the censorship of fake news can negatively impact freedom of speech. Fake news itself is undefinable, which makes the overall discussion of fake news hard within an academic context. This is why we are using a solid definition from another academic text, especially when discussing the case study in a bit. Fake news has the power to undermine actual facts within mainstream news media, to the extent that it actually jeopardizes democracy itself fundamentally. The other aims of fake news can also be political or economic in nature, as mentioned in the first text we discussed. At the time of the COVID pandemic, the lockdowns and overall dislike of the government response led to the push of disinformation to further cause government unrest. An after effect of this was governments recognizing that they could stamp down on information that came out against themselves. They could subsequently abuse this power to prevent people to speak out against them. The text lists Brazil as an example. Brazil's government began enacting laws against fake news. This was done during the COVID pandemic with the belief of regulating social media networks. The laws enacted directly violated human rights law. Governments across the EU have now begun regulating fake news. However, such rules increased significantly during the COVID pandemic. Most EU countries have summed up the fake news as criminal content that breached the peace. This is obviously an ambiguous summary that these governments can use to their advantage later. So moving on to reading 3. Reading 3 discusses how fake news can alter the general public's belief upon mainstream media, like, for example, make general audiences significantly more skeptical on how mainstream media produces news stories, and they'll analyze the processes in more detail. The text states that individuals are primed when information is delivered, and fake news may have an effect on how individuals interpret political issues or candidates. Fake news will become a permanent mainstay in a person's mind, and the concept would be recalled when analyzing mainstream news. Overall trust in mainstream media has already begun a decline in the United States, which displays a clear sign that this is a behaviour that echoes all across the world. People nowadays, especially with factors we will discuss in the case study, are starting to treat mainstream media as if it were blatant fake news. The text dubs this as media skepticism, the concept that mainstream media is unreliable, and that journalists are unreliable as well due to their own biases. So, what have we gathered from the text? Algorithmic audiencing on social media have the potential to shape the views of the public for economic gain. Content moderation, especially by a government, is seen as violating the freedom of speech for individuals. Governments tend to gravitate towards media capture methods, and fake news as a concept is used to undermine freedom of speech and breeds media skepticism. So, my case study is on Instagram, a free photo and video sharing platform available on iPhone and Android. It's owned by the same company behind Facebook, called Meta. In summary, Instagram's audience is more tailored for young people than Facebook. On occasion, the platform does recommend Instagram content to Facebook users and vice versa, but overall the platforms have fundamentally different audiences. As a result of this, young people on social media are more likely to have a condition towards the content they consume more akin to disassociation. As you can tell, this is a really fantastic Mike Tyson quote that basically sums up the whole thing. People on social media are getting too comfortable with disrespecting people and not getting punched in the face for it. This can be demonstrated not only by what I'm going to discuss, but also other videos I found in my research. This included an Angry Birds meme, where the bird literally exploded in the video. The video had no disclaimers and just demonstrated the clear lack of remorse or ethics on social media. This will be relevant soon. Also, if you notice, right down here, you can tell it's a young person because they have a Fortnite profile picture. That's an edit of a influencer. The way I began my research was by using the algorithmic audiencing methods against itself. I mean engaging with content I disliked and saving reels, but making the algorithm believe I liked it. This was achieved by liking and saving reels I came across that were unlike the content I engaged with. This subsequently began altering the other pieces of content I consumed, converting other pieces of content, like, for example, gym content, to be similar to the other content on my feed. This subsequently began a spiral into multiple other forms of content I had only witnessed on single-digit occasions. Some pieces of fake news content had disclaimers on it telling me it was false information, or a pop-up on the bottom of the screen encouraging me to see why the content was false. Including this clip I found interesting, but not for the reason the creators intended.
Anything, I'll do whatever it takes to... Anything up.
However, other pieces of content I consumed hadn't had these disclaimers.
We had
As
a
for
massive
example,
timeline
this
shift. Booyah. This was last night. I knew it the second that it happened. I could feel it. No, it may not look that big, but when it's like that, boom, massive timeline shift.
There was even a screenshot that I found that actually used the preventative measures used to prevent fake news against itself by photoshopping the fact checker on Twitter. This has led to the phenomenon dubbed by the community as schizogram.
We had a massive timeline shift. Booyah.
Oh, bugger. There you go. As I am likely the first to define this term within an academic setting, schizogram is a community-dubbed term to refer to fake news content made and distributed by individuals for economic and political motives. Most of this content follows conspiracy content, either with aliens, religious significance, or straight-up disinformation. You can also see examples of dissociation here by arguing that the man in the video should have a unregistered firearm. There's clear signs of racism as well, for example. Bugs in your blood, and a tumor. All of these are brought up by the audience. Mainstream media skepticism online, as in the readings to be likely fueled by, the disinformation and fake news, has resulted in accounts posting their own news content. Ooh. That was weird. These accounts are produced quickly with AI voices and reused animations. This means there isn't any specific newscaster, and some audiences have grown to prefer a fictional character to deliver their news. These pieces of content are more likely to have false information on them, a detail not discussed with the audience groups.
Is this not in the news? Part 2. While fires rage near 30 cities in South America, look at today's NASA fire map in Africa, where 6% of Angola has burned in a week. Hey, big media, these are big climate stories worth bigger coverage. I'm just a bird. What?
Breaking news! The parents of the OpenAI whistleblower Suchir Balaji, who passed away before his trial, have hired an independent investigator to determine his cause of death. Police medical examiners determined there was no foul play. However, Balaji's parents have doubts and hired an expert to perform an
Is this not in the news? Part 2.
breaking...
Okay, there you go. A common structure I have seen occur is something I will call the disinformation structure. A serious event occurs in the world. Then schizogram picks up the news story and memes are made. A cause of this is that misinformation is rampant. Then official mainstream news sources come out. New memes are made, and schizogram then continues the story, likely due to mentioned media skepticism. This has occurred with a wide array of different stories, from the recent LA fires to the Cybertruck Trump Tower explosion. As an example, let's use the assassination of CEO Brian Thompson. Schizogram picked up this news story and memes were subsequently made. Because of this, misinformation was rampant. To also bring up the dissociation with media, this is a rotoscope of the CEO assassination murder footage, replaced with a Fortnite character in Hatsune Miku, as a joke. Finally, the official news sources come out, yet the memes and schizogram content still remains. What if I told you that the two examples from before were content posted after the actual news sources began coming out? Schizogram, media literacy, and fake news have all been caused by the algorithmic audiencing that exists within modern social media. Also, the audiences that produce content have a sense of dissociation that causes fake news to be spread at a faster pace. If every piece of media was peer-reviewed, I genuinely believe this problem would not go away. The Pandora's box has been opened, and now politics across the world are suffering thanks to this. I cannot expect UNESCO to somehow achieve their existing global challenge with the current issues with social media. Social media, and all the factors discussed, fundamentally impact UNESCO's global challenge negatively. Apologies, I don't know why that's covered. The best next step at the moment would be to establish fact-checkers, maybe within the government themselves, that check the social media content that is uploaded, maybe add a disclaimer that directly states it hasn't been fact-checked yet, similar to the system already in place. Hopefully, it would limit the amount of disinformation. The main challenge with this topic overall is attempting to limit the amount of disinformation, whilst also trying to retain the already established norm of social media content. Social media users have dissociation with the products they consume. Also, a domino effect has basically occurred, and now each of these issues are representative of the overall system. For example, fake news breeded mistrust towards mainstream media, and subsequently the fact-checking media skeptics grew popular, which brings attention to misinformation and fake news more. So basically, it's produced a whole loop. In short, I believe that social media as a platform encourages the issues it contains. This subsequently will continue, likely permanently. On that note, I am finished with this presentation. These are my academic readings, as you can tell on screen, and I thank you for watching. I had to do a lot of work with this, and it took me a while to basically do my case study because I had to actually change my algorithm that I would get recommended content on. I highly recommend as well checking out these readings. Thank you so much for watching, and that's it. That's me done.